Hey guys, I've been watching a whole lot of YouTube videos about pizza making, bread making, and I'm learning that some people are more scientific in their approach than others. And I just wanted to highlight these two videos that I came across, very interesting, and I'll put the video links in the video description if you want to watch them. But one is from the owner of Blue Square Pizzeria, someplace in Massachusetts, and then the other is from Una Pizzeria in New York City, downtown, Orchard Street. Una Pizzeria has been ranked #1 in the world twice. Blue Square Pizzeria, by all accounts, makes outstanding pizza. But if you watch the videos, you'll see that they do the pizza chef. The owners do things totally different. So the owner of Blue Square is what I would call a scientist. Everything he has down to precision. So for example, he has a spreadsheet because he wants to get his dough at the exact same temperature every single time. So he uses a spreadsheet that inputs the flour temperature and the friction variation, which is, when you have an electric mixer, that mechanical mixing creates friction, which creates heat, so that makes the dough hotter. He has all these other factors inputted, so when, like the air temperature, so basically he has it set up to figure out exactly what temperature the water should be in order to get a certain temperature of dough in the end. Okay, and he's precise. Every single time he gets the exact same thing. Both of these places use starter, and this guy at Blue Square, he'll even test the pH on his starter to make sure it doesn't get too acidic. Okay, he wants a starter to be very, very consistent. Because if it's a starter, when the starter gets too acidic, that's when you get that real sourdough taste that some sourdough breads have. You don't have to have that sour taste. It's sourdough. He doesn't want it. So he makes sure your starter does not get too acidic. Another example was he pre-bakes the mushrooms and peppers to get the moisture out. Otherwise, the moisture gets dumped onto the cheese and it becomes a soggy mess. Another example of his scientist mind is he actually puts less sauce on the pizzas with sausage and onions because they emit moisture to the sauce. He has the place where he buys his flour from. He has them mill it very specifically to get a certain extraction rate that he thought was best. The extraction rate is basically like what percentage of whole wheat a flour is, like what percentage of flour, what percentage of like the what do they call this? The endosperm, the bran, what percentage of that is mixed into flour? And his ideal extraction rate is 83%, which is kind of between a white flour and whole wheat. So that's how he goes about it. He gets good results, and his dough is very, very consistent. His pizzas are very, very consistent. If you watch the other video about the Una Pizzeria, or Una Pizzeria Napolaetana, the owner is an artist. He is the only one in the restaurant that will make dough. And as such, he only is open 3 days a week. It's 3 nights a week he's open because it's so hard on his body to make the dough, all of the dough. I think he mentioned he's in his early 50s and it's just too much for him. Nobody else can make the dough like he does because they haven't developed the art skills, or he's never broken it down to a science. He uses tap water, which is normal for New York. He's making pizza napoletana, whereas the guy at Blue Square is making New York and Detroit style. But the principle is the same. I mean, if you're running a restaurant, you've got to have some degree of consistency. You've got to have a lot of consistency, right, to make good pizza where people want to come back. So anyways, this guy here, he uses tap water, and he uses his hand to measure the temperature of the water, okay? He doesn't even measure the ingredients. He doesn't measure the flour or the water. He just takes a chunk of starter and adds flour and water, and that's it. He eyeballs it. And his dough varies so much. He says, at one point he said, today we're going to have like 135 pizzas, depends on how much water I use. So every single day he's going to have a little bit different number of pizzas to bake, ready to bake. So every single day he's going to have a different number of pizzas because his methods are so imprecise. I thought that was really interesting. when he's mixing in the flour and water, he said he adds an amount based off of how the starter looks, the air temperature, and the time of the day. Okay, that's about as artistic as you can get, right? There's nothing scientific about that. So this guy, Una Pizzeria, obviously he knows what he's doing. Obviously, the guy at Blue Sky is going to have more consistent pizza. But obviously, if the guy at Una Pizzeria is selling out every single night, which he is, he's going to have a pretty high degree of consistency just using his own artistic skills. And then I found a video with the owner of Scarr's Pizzeria, which is one of my very favorite pizzerias in New York. He's kind of in between the two. So he measures out most ingredients, but when he's adding water, he says that's all by look and feel. He ferments the dough in the mixing bowl for 4 to 5 hours, then shapes it, and then cold ferments for 2 to 3 days in the fridge, and then lets it warm up at room temperature for 2 to 3 hours before baking. It's pretty informal. This whole interview is pretty informal. You know, he's like, yeah, it'll sit in the fridge for 2 or 3 days. He didn't say, but I'm assuming he goes for like a 2-day ferment, but then if he doesn't sell out, then he'll just put it back in the fridge for another day, or leave it in the fridge for another day and use the next thing, you know. And Scarr's is really, really good dough. It might be my favorite dough in all of New York that I've ever tasted before. And he's not a scientist, not quite an artist, but leaning towards the artistic type. So anyways, I think the takeaway here is to be the type of pizza chef that fits your personality. Because if you're not the scientific type and you're going to try to measure out everything, the flour temp and the air temp and the water temp, and you know, there's even a formula. You can Google this or go on AI and say ask a question like, at what speed does yeast ferment in flour? There's actually a mathematical formula that you can figure out the rate based off of the temperature of everything, the air temperature, the water temperature. You can get that scientific if you want. I don't, because that would just drive me crazy. For my experiments, I'm kind of getting a pretty good feeling of what changes are going to make a difference, which ones aren't. I'm getting pretty good at discerning that. And to me, where I'm at right now is I can kind of tell, like, yeah, if I was to be a little more scientific in my experiments, I might be able to be more precise in the rise time. I could have my pizza dough balls ready at this time no matter what. But with a little bit of artistic license, you know, I can guess within an hour or two. And for me, my life right now, that's close enough. You know, if I want pizza tomorrow or the next day, I can just make some dough, and I kind of got it figured out where I can make some really good dough and it'll be done fermenting about when I want it, you know. But if I was running a pizzeria, I would probably take the more scientific approach because I want 500 dough balls ready at 10:30 a.m. every single day. You know what I mean? And to do that, you've really got to be scientific. But that's the main takeaway. Figure out what type of personality you have and make pizza accordingly, or else I think you're going to go crazy either way. If you're the scientific type, you're going to go crazy trying to be an artist, and vice versa. So that's what I've been thinking about. Let me know what you think. Thanks.